Community support for this program is provided by the East Hill Tree Farm, nursery for fruit trees, nuts, and berry plants, offering winter fruit tree pruning. For appointments or information, you can contact Nico at easthilltreefarm.com or 454-7874. Bless up the earth.
You're listening to In the Weeds Prohibition Talk Radio on WGDR 91.1 and WGDH 91.7.
Good morning, Canna friends and Canna foes. We are back. You are listening to WGDR Plainfield, WGDH Hardwick. Have to apologize here. Got some technical difficulties trying to get this show up and going for you guys. Hopefully I just didn't lose our news, which I think I might have. But anyways, guys, we're here today. We have a great show coming for you. Very important show to us today. The show basically is going to be about cannabis, your kids, and parents. Parents versus pot. What should you do as a parent? How should you interact with your kids? What should you be teaching your kids when it comes to cannabis and how that will work with lots of other things, people, places, stuff like that. So, guys, don't go anywhere. We are going to hopefully get this show rolling here. We do have Brandon Barberio on the line from Arizona. Brandon, how you doing this morning?
Excellent. How are you, bro?
Doing all right. We're doing all right. We got a couple little technical difficulties with the news. I think I just deleted it, honestly. But anyways, guys, we're here. You're there. So, all right. So normally, typically, we do the newsreel. Typically, we don't on the open, table topic kind of form that we do here. This week, I'll see if I can get it figured out here. Anyways, guys, the big debate, right? If you guys are tuned into us on social media, if you're on our Facebook page, if you follow us in any sort of realm, you will know that, just recently we had posted a post basically with the topic of, when do you teach your children about cannabis? It took off, man. We had a lot of huge and interesting comments back on it. So, again, today, we're just going to open the phone lines for anybody who wants to call in about the subject and tell us how you feel about it. The biggest thing, like we said, obviously, is, when do you teach your kids about cannabis? This is the biggest thing going on in the country right now. It is the hottest thing going on in the country right now. When you look at that and go, hey, what do I do? You know what I mean? Obviously, there's going to be the stigmas that we used to face back in the day when it comes to children in school, how parents are viewed by other parents, obviously, and things of that nature. So, guys, again, if you want to give us a call, 802-454-7762. And one of the reasons I brought this up was, again, I read an article the other day, and we had it ready for the news, basically about a 13-year-old girl who is being held from her parents. She's in state custody right now, and they just signed an order for her to basically force her to get an operation that neither her or her parents want to have. It's a pretty crazy story, man. Brennan, how do you feel? Let's talk about this really quick. I mean, I have a couple of strong opinions we'll touch base on here shortly. But when it comes to kids and cannabis, now, how do you feel? I mean, obviously it's different nowadays, but how do you feel we should be approaching this in 2019?
I mean, I think it should be the norm, if you will. I think that the nostalgia should really be dropped. I think, there might be a little bit more research that needs to be done, but all these things being taken into consideration, I think we've come to a time where it should just be wide open discussion. I would say probably from the age of maybe 4, 5 years old, 6 years old, somewhere in there, and I think that I think there's two kind of different stances, if you will, too, with this, right? Because there's going to be the parents who are involved in cannabis, and they're raising their children in cannabis, in that realm, that culture, in that type of corporation type setting, whatever it may be. And then, of course, there's going to be the parents who are either for it or against it, and how their views are going to be towards their children. And obviously these are all opinions, and everybody's entitled to any opinion that they really, that everybody's going to feel a specific way about it, and we all really understand that, and that's totally fine. But, I mean, I think it should be open. I mean, I don't really feel that it's that taboo of a subject, if you will.
Yeah, but we're in the industry, right? So, recently I had an issue with my child's parent about the fact of cannabis, right? So I have a younger child. Most people know, if you know me, guys, whose birthday is today. So a big shout out to my little one and happy 7th birthday. But the fact came up as, he kind of understands it. He gets it. It's a medically used thing, right?
Okay. Well, then why is it a problem, if you will? Let's just jump to that. Why is it a problem? What's the problem?
Well, that's my question. I guess the problem is why. I mean, and please, people call in on this subject because, I have a 6-year-old. Should he know about cannabis? Should he be in a garden touching cannabis and learn how it grows?
Sure. Why not?
Well,
I don't think it's any different than what if you're raised and you're on a farm and you work in a dairy farm or a regular farm. You know what I mean? You plant corn, you plant hay, you plant. We used to live in a society in the United States. It's so funny how people forget how entrenched the United States really was in hemp and cannabis. I mean, that really was our society. It was the norm, okay? Obviously, things changed. We got away from that. And I think everybody's trying to get back to it, if you will. Mm-hmm. And, the education starts with the children, if you will. And the medicine and everything should be done the right way, I mean, I don't think it's any different than, let's say, the old school family, right, in Virginia or Tennessee that were moonshiners and passed their trades and traditions down through hundreds of years of how to make corn liquor. Like, what's the difference?
Right.
Why? Because it was a different time? You know what I mean? I don't know. That's not right. I think...
Well, I mean, it was a different time then. So, obviously we're in Vermont. The show's based in Vermont. We come from a farm and agricultural kind of place. So, I mean, obviously in Vermont, I think the viewpoints might be a little bit different than somebody who lives in a city, right? But the thing is sure. In our generation prior to us and the generations prior to that, I mean, you typically would have kids to be farmhands, right? So they would be on the farm, and they would be touching and involved at a very young age, where... because of that, we have an agriculture system in Vermont that is, pretty good, right? It's long-term family farms. The struggle right now is to keep up with the family farms. But beyond that, when do you when do we destigmatize this, right? And not only is it for kids, but we have lots of other industries that we still have issues with, federally and furthermore. But with the kid thing, there's a lot of people that say, hey, maybe educating them about the plant itself is okay until a certain point, until a certain age. I had somebody bring up a really, really, really great point earlier when I was talking about this. And basically the point was, what about smoking, right? So, here we are trying to destigmatize it. We have all these reports that young adolescent use is not climbing. It's going down in most places, right? And a lot of times we discuss this as, the legality of it, the loss of stigma of it. People just don't see it as something they want to do. And somebody brought up the question of, well, cigarettes, right? When you were a kid, did you want to try a cigarette knowing that you couldn't smoke until you're 21? It's kind of the same issue that we're putting out there right now with cannabis, right? Because everything's 21 or older. Now, will this kind of kick back to us and encourage kids again to smoke once it's all legal and available? And again, we can go down to, I remember when we could get cigarettes in little machines, at the bowling alley.
Right.
You go buy a pack of cigarettes and throw a couple quarters in the machine and buy a pack of cigarettes, We used to do it in middle school, walking home because it was right by the BPOE. We just walk in the front lobby, buy a pack of cigarettes and leave. There was no ID, nothing back then, right? Granted, times have changed, but with that being said, that was a great question that I was asked.
No, it is.
How do we look at that if you look at it from that viewpoint, where we bring in, like, say we bring in the cigarette viewpoint of it, and we can't advertise to kids and that kind of thing? Is that something we should be wary of? Is that something we should fall in line with? Is this?
Well, yeah. Think of it like this. I'll play devil's advocate with you, right? There's an opium epidemic right now in the United States. Okay, how about this? What if, instead of everybody hiding all their problems and all their troubles and everything that they were doing, okay, and how tough life was, maybe because it was a single mother or father, or maybe there was only one income, whatever the situation is, it doesn't really matter, right? But what if those people, or an educational system, any form, had educated those children about opiates? Mm-hmm. The reason that children don't want to do opiates today are pretty much because they see their parents as junkies, because they're watching them slowly destroy their lives. It's so evident. You can just see it. They don't want to be like that. That's wrong. You could have negated the whole entire situation. You could have literally just educated the children from the get-go, and then, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Moved on from that point. It would have been like, look, this is really bad. In certain cases, in medical instances, maybe these substances are needed for certain things. Fair enough. I could speak to that personally. I was in a situation in my life where I was laid up because I had a really bad back injury, and I used opiates for 30 days. I used them for what they were supposed to be used for, and then I got off of them. And I literally went through a whole rehab period and everything, because I knew if I kept eating them, that I likely was just going to keep eating opiates. You just keep going down that line. Mm-hmm. I was lucky enough to have enough realization, really, of that I needed to stop doing this. You know what I mean? But that was just because of an educated source. Mm-hmm. Nothing more than that. So I that's what I mean. Just the education is so important that had we done it at an earlier age, maybe there wouldn't be such a huge epidemic with opium and pills.
But when and where do you educate? Does it go into the school systems? Is it something that we continue to avoid?
Well, everybody's going to have a different opinion about that, right? Parents are going to want different things in different circumstances. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Depending on what they're used to, how they were raised, in the whole 9 yards. So I think everybody's going to have a different viewpoint. But I would love to see it in the home. I would love to see parents take charge and sit down and be like, hey, this is. I would have loved it if one of my parents had looked at me and been like, I was experiencing this a little bit younger in life, and let me tell you about what happened with me, and, you know, and they just didn't have that experience. My dad was a master plumber. My mother was a stay-at-home mom, and they were just doing the best that they could. You know what I mean? They had zero experience really in cannabis or any sort of drugs or anything like that, minus a little bit of alcohol that they drank, and they just worked so much that was just, you know, life was just different back then. You know, we used to find our kids by putting all of our friends, taking our bike and throwing it in somebody's yard, and that's where everybody showed up. Like, so it's difficult because you're right. There's a lot going on with media, social media. You know what I mean? Isn't there a war, right? Like, oh, this could be very beneficial, and then there's another side that says it's completely not. Like,
yeah,
it's all based on opinion. You know, it's all going to be based on what everybody wants to do and what they want to have involved in their house.
Right. Now, but when we start talking about endocannabinoid systems, right?
Okay.
You know, now we're talking about the medical side of this, right? So most parents, you know, how many parents right now in this country are I guess we could say self-medicating, because, you know, a lot of it is basically self-medication at this point. Even if your doctor prescribes it to you, you're not getting insurance coverage or anything of that nature. So if you're self-medicating, shouldn't your children know about what's going on with you? Like, I mean, you know, how many kids have grown up to see mommy on the couch, like, wiped out because of some sort of prescription that she had taken for something that she's dealing with, you know what I mean? Or dad as well, drooling, or just being, you know, anger or whatever ill side effect that these drugs have done. I mean, we talk to patients all the time, Brandon, about how much, you know, especially opioid patients at this point, about how cannabis has changed their lives, but not only their lives, but their families' lives, right? So, like, a lot of people don't realize, you know, there's a lot of these families that are either in drug, alcohol, and or abusive situations, right, where, you know, they don't. How do you change this, right? How do you change these cycles? How do you get somebody to not be an alcoholic? How do you get somebody not to be an opioid abuser? Especially when they're at the point where, you know that their families are involved. That's the biggest thing for me.
Information, right? Knowledge, total education. Imagine, in a perfect world, that when you went and you didn't feel good, hey, Brandon, listen, we ran a whole bunch of tests, and we found out that you have stage 3 cancer. But you know what? Don't worry about it, because we have a cannabis specialist for you. And then you go and see this cannabis specialist. He sits down and he goes, well, look, there's a lot of damage here, but you got about 15,000 milligrams of this FICO and this RSO right here. It's super high quality. We're going to knock this thing out. We're going to take care of that. And then if that doesn't work, we're going to see what other measures we need to take in order to do this. You know what I mean? Oh, wow. How many people do you know that if they had those type of options in their life would still be alive today? There would be a lot of people. A lot of people that just didn't know about alternative medication and how powerful it really was. You know what I mean? And that just comes down to knowledge and education. And, we say this all the time, Joe. How many times have we said almost 85 to 86% of the medical industry has no idea that there is a human endocannabinoid system? They don't even understand that it exists in the human body.
So that's my point there. Like, when do you cross that line with your children? I mean, and the other thing that people don't really realize is, most of these children, right? They are in this because, they're in the situation basically because they're sick. You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of kids right now that are on CBD oil. I mean, there's states in California and school systems that are allowing kids to use and consume at school.
Progress.
You know what I mean?
That's what it is. It's progress. Thank God, right? I mean, come on. There's got to be some type of light at the end of the tunnel somewhere. Like, it's progress. That's what it is. I think people are literally starting to wake up and go, hey, this works. And if we have high quality, third-party tested products, This is great medicine. It works.
Yeah.
People are sick of losing people that they love to something that can be prevented, if you will.
Right.
And I think the public is starting to really realize that. If I can for a second here, I want to, like I talked to you before the show about this, I had mentioned that I looked up a whole bunch of stuff with children in cannabis, right? So what I want to do to you is I want to read you these. These are major headlines that have come out basically within the last week. Okay, Zelda Therapeutics archives patient milestone into autism treatment for cannabis study. Now, this is all based around children. That's amazing. You know what I mean? This is a day ago. The fight to get access to medical cannabis in the UK, not only for adults, but also for children as well. The UK over in England is basically, they're trying to run it as basically just like they do their healthcare system. And you're seeing this more and more and more and more. It's cannabis related to poison control. What's right, what's wrong. Cannabis oil is too expensive when prescribed to epileptic children. So now we're looking for an advisory to find a different solution to make it affordable for the people that really need it. Mm-hmm. That tells you something. When you're seeing articles like this that are coming out this is just within the last week, that tells me a lot. That tells me that the stigma is changing, that people are using this as medicine, and it's working for their children. Who really wants to put a small child on Ritalin because they have ADD, when you could just give them a couple drops of CBD under their tongue every day before they walk out the door to go to school, and everything will be totally fine? You know what I mean? That's the real world that we live in. We're almost coming into a transition, the revolution of getting off of all the pills and going back to natural medicine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's what it really comes down to.
And it's not all cannabis either, right? It's holistic medicines.
There are so many herbs out there that are so beneficial for the human body that people use on a regular basis. But, as a society, we're so disconnected with that because people are too busy trying to get the latest iPhone or the newest curved TV or whatever the hottest item is that they want to have for whatever reason, instead of focusing on more of a health and wellness standpoint that's extremely simple. It is. Mm-hmm. It's an extremely simple thing, right? It's not difficult to, use mint and different herbs to your advantage for different things, for different illnesses. Our generations of grandparents and their parents were doing it for a long time, and it worked.
Yes. No, again, what do you do in these situations? And then, we live in a day and age where, we are talking about education for kids, right? Where it seems like the hottest news of the last couple of weeks has been human trafficking, child trafficking. We got people, caretakers getting charged for trafficking children. So, as a parent, it seems like we can't trust our child care services, right? We can't trust anybody around our kids. And then now, with doctors, right? So doctors, you're trained to listen to your doctor since the day you're little, right? So, obviously everybody has a different opinion and every doctor has a different opinion, but we are trained to listen to our doctors and to respect what the doctors say. So, as you said, we only have, about 75% of the medical industry is... They don't know. They're not taught. It's not in a textbook anywhere. And these reports keep coming up, and these, researchings keep coming back where we found that we have these receptors. The CB1, the CB2 receptors. That work within our body and how it works within what these plants are for us. So we're like you said, man, we're kind of going back and back and back. And the best thing about it, from a side note, is now we're seeing the live soil epidemic come back. We're seeing people fight against Monsanto and all these chemicals are going into these plants, and they're again, it's education, right? So the more you get educated, the better you are. But as a parent out there, what's your opinion on your children. You know what I mean? We here at the show faced a little bit of scrutiny a little, when we first started the show about, our previous time slot, which, we're still in the daytime. And, the scrutiny was, my kid could be listening to your show. You're promoting a illegal substance in essence. Well, right now it's legal in Vermont to a point, right? It's legal in 33 states right now. So, to a point, whether it's medical or recreational, people can still go get it, and your children should know about it. My response was, if you look at the Colorado model, where's all this money coming from taxes? It's going to educate children, right? It's going to build resources for children. It's to help roads and the schools for children, right? So if anybody should be educated about this, and we want to have, a future that's bright and, with educated people on the biggest industry right now going in America, shouldn't we be educating our children?
Yes.
Would it be
definitely
right? I mean, we educate about science all the time. Now, here's a great plant that has tons of science related to it. That is what we've come to find out is an extraordinary plant that can help out human beings in so many different ways. When do we introduce the endocannabinoid system into science class? And should we?
Oh man, I mean. Let me think about it for a second. I believe it was 7th grade or 8th grade when you were in human biology, right? So, I mean, that's a great time, right? Why not? Put that information that right in there, that would be perfect, if you will, because then you could conceptualize it. I mean, I didn't have a problem understanding what my stomach or my brain or my kidney or my lymph nodes were. So, I don't really think this is a far reach, right? Like, why not? That seems like the appropriate time. I mean, I don't think that there's anything wrong with maybe education before that, and there's people out there that literally take infants and do specific things with them, like read to them at an extremely early age. And, there's just different practices that people use in order to help educate their children at a young age because they want them to have a little bit of a jump, if you will. You know what I mean? But I think that, once again, it comes down to personal preference, too, as well. You know what I mean?
Right.
This is all about what do you want in your home, too. And that's a very big opinion. What am I going to allow, if you will, as the parent? So you have to throw that into the mix, too. What is acceptable?
Well, it's the same thing with something like video games, right? Like, when do you let them play a scary video game? You know what I mean? When do you let them watch the movie It? You know what I mean? When do you allow these things to happen in your children's lives where you feel comfortable with them being able to handle a situation? Now, if you're a farmer of hemp or any sort of other agriculture, like, when do you bring your kids out to, help with, the farm work? You know what I mean?
Any farmer's going to tell you from birth, right? Wasn't that the model? If you were a farmer and your wife, and you would have a lot of kids so that they would help out with the farm. You know what I mean? I can speak that just from fact. I got family that's up in upstate. My cousins got 6 kids because that's what they do for a living. They got a dairy farm, and everybody works on that farm. You know what I mean? And obviously they grow their own vegetables and everything like that. And if they were to start growing industrial hemp, they would be helping with that too. Mm-hmm. That's just how it is, though, because that's coming from a completely different standpoint. I don't really think that there's a lot of nostalgia around that, if you will, because you're a farmer. It's agriculture, so right there, it's just dropped. It's just part of the things that you're growing on your farm, if you will. However, if you were not a farmer, let's say you were a master grower who got a license to open a grow business, okay, and all you were growing was cannabis, that's all, you know what I mean, high-test cannabis and hemp, there could be, I suppose, maybe more nostalgia about that too, but if that's what your trade is and you want your children to be involved in that trade from the get-go, I don't really think that there's anything wrong with that either. We're not talking about children using cannabis. We're not, you know what I mean? Like, none of that. This is just something that this is part of their life. This is no different than someone who grows up in a household like my father was a master plumber. Now, naturally, I know about plumbing. I can put toilets in and fix sinks and, lay pipe for baseboard heating and lead and wool, like, old cast iron and stuff like that. But it's just because that's what I was surrounded with.
Right. I mean, You're exactly right. I mean, whether you teach your kids or not, they're going to pick up on stuff.
Definitely.
Like in my situation where my kid's understanding and can pretty much have an intellectual conversation with anybody about cannabis at this point because he hears me all day on the phone. We have guests that come and stay with us, friends of ours in the cannabis industry, and we talk about cannabis. And I don't shield or lie to my son because it's a legal thing. B, it's going to be a huge part of their lives as they grow up, right? I mean, right now it's a huge part of everybody's life. Just imagine what your adolescent teen right now is going through because. When we were kids, it was all the stigma, the prohibition, don't do drugs, don't do drugs,
right.
Don't do drugs. And now we're like, we're legalizing mushrooms. Mexico just legalized cocaine for recreational use.
I
know. In this day and age, it's unreal to see what's going on in our country. But then again, we talk about these, let's talk about these countries that have, decriminalized a lot of these drugs, where they're finding usages dropping on opioids and certain things. So, but right now, guys, it's 12:30. We're going to take a break. You are tuned in to WGDR Plainfield, WGH Hardwick. This is In the Weeds, Prohibition Talk Radio on 91.1 FM and 91.7. Don't go anywhere. We have Brendan Barberio, our resident cannabis expert, with his strain of the week right after this. Don't go anywhere.
You're listening to In the Weeds Prohibition Talk Radio on WGDR 91.1 and WGDH 91.7. I'm Brandon Barberio, your cannabis expert for In the Weeds Prohibition Talk Radio on WGDR. This week's strain of the week is the King Louis XIII. King Louis is an indica-dominant hybrid strain with a very strong cross at a 70-30 indica-sativa ratio. It originated as a phenotype of the OG Kush, has a sensational 20%. And the strain is actually named after King Louis XIII of France for a very good reason, and it does not disappoint. The buds are incredibly dense and large, all while being covered with orange hairs. You'll notice that the light green amongst all the white, and it treats it, as the cannabis likes to say, looking extremely fresh. The smell is incredibly fresh and heavy, and it is sweet at the same time. The taste is a blend of sweet and sour notes. This is a perfect ideal strain for medicating. King Louis will overwhelm your senses, and it is not really a creeper, it's an instant high. You'll experience a very heavy feeling throughout your body, and your head will also feel euphoric and happy. All of these are very consistent, and the strain is recommended for nighttime use. It is a perfect solution for individuals who are suffering from insomnia because it will knock you out due to its heavy sativa effect. That being said, the King Louis also offers great relief for chronic pain, depression, insomnia, and stress. Once again, I'm Brandon Barberio, your cannabis expert for In the Weeds Prohibition Talk Radio on WGDR.
Alrighty, we're back again, guys. Now, the subject of the day today, guys, we're talking about is our kids. This is a big subject in America right now, especially with states legalizing for recreational, states legalizing medically, and then also we're finding a lot of these kids are using medical cannabis, whether it's an oil or whatever product that they're using to help them medically. We talked about how it's allowed in some school systems right now where your children can go in and take their CBD oil or whatever it is that they need to medicate and get themselves throughout a day. And the reports are staggering, guys. I mean, if me and Brandon talk about this a lot, and we see these reports and we talk about these reports a lot, and basically the reports are telling us that what? It's helping with opioid abuse, right? It's, our crashes with adolescents are going down. Our usage among adolescents are going down in states that are legalized, right? And I believe I just read an article the other day. I'm going to try to find it here in a minute. That was basically talking about how all of America is the numbers are staggeringly dropping, even in states that are not legal. Now the funny question is, in a state that's not legal, is it because they're jumping to the next state over that's legal? And then that raises a whole other question about tax dollars and funding and things like that. But then again, that's your state's problem, right? Getting back to the kids, we were talking about medical a little bit. And I want to shift gears over to one more thing that we discussed last week, and it's been a discussion that I bring up, especially when we talk about should the government have their hand within the industry or not, right? You've heard me many times, Brandon, comment that I believe when it comes to the medical industry that it should have some sort of federal oversight, right? And that way, the parents of this 13-year-old girl are not going to be sitting in jail while their 13-year-old girl is in basically state custody awaiting a trial, basically to tell her that she has to proceed with a operation against her will and against her parents' will, right? So now it becomes the state's will, right? In this day and age, Brandon, how is this even happening?
I mean, I could go in 5 different directions, to be very fair with you on that actual subject. This is a very sore subject for me because I really feel for these people. I mean, they are not lying. They're not. They're in a situation where they're really just trying to do the best thing that they possibly can. The problem with that is that, when the state gets involved, things become very convoluted, extremely quick, and we know exactly why. And now, if there was no federal type of resistance in cannabis, would this be happening? Let's ask that question. What do you think, Joe? If cannabis was federally legal, would we be reading this story right now?
Well, no, I don't believe so.
Right.
But then again, could you? Because if you leave it to a state to decide, right? This is the state court right now deciding that this girl needs to go through with an operation for her cancer, right?
Right.
Does that change though? But because if without a federal oversight and we put it into the hands of the state, does that change the outcome of this particular judgment?
I'm gonna say yes, because you could go to a state where it was legal then, if that's the case. We have that option, I mean, there's 50 states. You can visit them all.
Right.
So, yeah, of course you can. And if that's what you want, then you're going to write. What's not to say that the family in New York has a child that recently is diagnosed with some form of terminal illness, and they know that very high dosage of, RSO and FECO will really help their child out. What's to stop them from going to Colorado and taking care of said child, right? You can do that. That's legal. There's nothing wrong with that. There's not, and there's people out there that will help you to do that because that's what's happening.
Right. But here we are in this situation. Okay, so this case, and I'll go into it a little bit more. So any of the listeners wanted to look this up if they haven't seen it already. Kylie Dixon is a 13-year-old cancer patient from Oregon. So in Portland, Oregon, where you would think that this wouldn't be an issue like this, right? Basically the state child welfare workers, they're moving forward with this surgery. They had a judge that said that, basically they're going to move forward with it. Now, should a judge be able to make a decision for a 13-year-old cancer patient and not the parents? I mean, this is where another question arises with more than just a cannabis thing, but for any sort of child that is, where a parent, wanting an alternative treatment because, the main treatments aren't necessarily working for people. Now, is this a question of medical kidnapping or saving her life?
I mean, once again, I could go in 5 different directions answering this question because you want to talk about a hot button subject, if you will. This is it right here. You know what I mean? This is what it really boils down to when it comes to children and cannabis, because the public sees the results, and then you have that's a very good point. You have a case like this where it's in Oregon, like you said, where you would think that they would be like, okay, well, why don't we try this treatment first? I think maybe there's got to be a little bit more to the story than maybe we're not getting, if you will, because it maybe treatment was tried, and now the judge feels that the parents are within neglect for some reason. You know what I mean? And if that was the case, then I could see the judge wanting to rule that specific way because the judge feels that he or she is acting in the best interest of that child.
Right. So now,
because there's always 2 sides to the story. You know what I mean? And it's very tough right now with media because of this nostalgia. Okay? So, I mean, this could erupt into a huge argument, if you will, in between 2 different sides. There's always something. You know what I mean? I'll give you an example. This would be like, oh, there was this video footage of said person, and then said person got in a fight with a police officer, and then the whole story kind of gets blown up, if you will, okay? And then either one of 2 things happens, right? They release the camera footage where we find out the truth, and the guy really was abusive, or he wasn't abusive. You know what I mean? Right. And the person was mouthing off to him the whole time and just being completely disrespectful the whole time. And you know what I mean? Now, there's 2 sides to every story. So there has to be a cause for it, if you will. Do I think it's right that the state is stepping in to make that judgment for that family? No, not really. But I also think that there's got to be a cause, if you will. And I don't think we have that information to know, you know what I mean, what that cause is. Right.
I mean, unfortunately, there's a lot of issues like this going on in our country. I just found a great article here from Recovery First American Addiction Centers. Now, this is an addiction center put out a thing about cannabis and families. And basically, there's all sorts of things where, children have been removed from parents' houses for legally growing cannabis that they're allowed to grow a legal state. Here's another case of Savannah Lackey, who had a legitimate prescription for cannabis and was cultivating a small amount of cannabis on her property, and this is in Northern California, right? So here we are, another legal state, right? She, was very careful about doing things according to regulations. She attended community meetings. She was friends with the local sheriff and the growers and the unions over there, and she understood how to properly, flow her letter for growing medical marijuana. Now, this is somebody who's even has a license to grow medical marijuana, right? But after a community meeting, about 7 days after, the sheriff raided her house. They seized her legally grown cannabis, and they took her children at gunpoint. Now, this is at gunpoint. Now, imagine, here we are. We talk about children being removed as what. But what happens to these kids? We complain about the government taking kids and put them into these kid camps, right? And what's the difference between this when you as a kid, your parents' door gets kicked in and you're taken by gunpoint, and then you're in the custody of the state, right? When you're in the custody of the state, right, it doesn't mean that it's a safe position for you. Right? There's other cases, and here's one in Arizona where a toddler was taken from the parents for just smoking pot, right? It was a 2-year-old. They were removed from their custody. She was placed in a foster home, and the foster home abused her, right? And then she was subsequently placed in a different foster home where that foster mother in that home murdered the kid. Now, this is over smoking cannabis. This isn't over growing. This isn't over delivery. This isn't over distribution. This is over smoking cannabis. This article touches base on a lot of different things where, people, and these articles are based on people who were just in conversations in public. So it would be like me and you on this radio show, and then tomorrow the state comes and takes my kid because I'm on a radio show, right? Because I'm talking about cannabis openly, right? Because I'm an open cannabis user, and I use it medically and for things that, help me on my everyday. So does that mean I should be losing my child tomorrow?
No. But this is what everybody's biggest fear is. There's no two doubts about that.
Right. We're even seeing issues with people with hemp, you know what I mean? So there's this lady, Diane Fornbacher. I'm sorry if I said her name wrong. She's an award-winning activist, right, and a journalist. She championed the fight for medical cannabis and other legislation related to her cannabis in her state. And then her 9-year-old son was asked during an Earth Day event at his school what could be done to help the plant. The boy responded that hemp could be used to help alleviate many problems. So this would be like me educating my son going to school and the teacher asking him a legit question, him answering it in a very intelligent way, right? And then the next day, child care workers show up on my door and take my kid away from me. Ultimately, no charges were filed, but her son was removed from her care only for a short period of time. But it probably would have been different if she wasn't a recognizable figure in the cannabis industry, right? So these are all real issues, guys, that are going on with parents in cannabis. Now, here we are in the state of Vermont. We got Massachusetts, we got Maine, and then there's also New Hampshire kind of stuck in the middle there, where we're seeing these things. Anybody who wants to call in and give us their opinion on how they feel about parents and cannabis, laws, how schools should handle this. We've had reports of, kids selling edibles in school, right? Some have hit mainstream, some haven't. Some get swept under the rug, some get put to the news, right? But this is a real issue that can happen in school. We get a lot of concerned parents and even people within the industry, the cannabis industry, that have a general concern about kids, with edibles and cannabis of that nature. You know what I mean? Whether it's a pretty little packaging, whether it's a shape that kids like. We see multiple different things that are kid-friendly, I guess you could say, that are definitely not kid-friendly. They're poisonous. They're things that we're trying to gear towards a younger generation. Cigarettes used to be a big thing back in the day when we were growing up, Brandon, right? Remember Joe Camel? Even NASCAR, of all people, took the Winston Cup away, right? So now it's a NASCAR Cup, right? So, here we are. So we get back to that question that I was asked yesterday about tobacco, right? Should we be concerned, man? Like, here we are, the cannabis industry is pushing forward, full steam ahead. Most states are legalizing. And, every day we're reading something about a bill being brought forth, an attempt for legalization, whether recreational or medical. And then we see all these states that have medical now shifting a lot of their standards to get your license, right, your medical card, and within their states, and they're accepting of more issues, whether it's opioids or pain management or any sort of medical issue that you may have. We're seeing a big uptick in this, right? But now we're seeing the backtick in tobacco. But are we different, right? Is it going to be studied different? In Ontario today or this week, they legalized consumption, right? So you can literally go anywhere tobacco is smoked, and light up a joint and not have to worry about anything, except for a few minimal places where it's like around libraries and schools and
but it'll be posted,
right? Because
it's Canada, and that's how everything works in Canada. See, that's the one thing I like about Canada. They tell you, they will literally put something there and tell you what you can do and what you can't do. Mm-hmm. Now, if you choose to break the law, that's on you. And if you get caught, you're going to jail. Because they'll be like, clearly there was a sign right here that says you can smoke that joint over here and not here. Now, I don't know why you got to be a rebel. And most Canadian cops would probably be like, I don't know why you got to be a rebel But can you go over there? Like, no one, this isn't super hardcore, but I mean, I think that's amazing progress because it just really gives people more of a social atmosphere to consume cannabis responsibly. This is going to become no different than people going to a bar drinking liquor.
No, obviously that's the future that we see, right? But is that the future that people are going to accept? Remember a few weeks ago, or it's probably a couple months ago now, where somebody took a poll. I should find it here somewhere about people who don't like the smell of pot. Do you think that's going to become an issue? Obviously the smoking thing was a health factor, it was a smell factor, it was a second-hand smoke factor, you know what I mean? And now, we seem to have these groups that talk about cannabis smell. Do you think that'll be ever an issue anywhere, or are we just going to accept the fact that cannabis is going to be here and it's just going to be part of the essence of where you're at?
There's always going to be an issue because everybody has an opinion. Once again, they're entitled to it. That's totally fine. But yeah, I mean, that's a very simple question to answer. There's always going to be an issue. Somebody's always going to have some form of something to say against it if they really don't approve of it or whatever their own personal reason is. So,
I mean, I think a couple
if
studies
there's specific areas, right?
Yeah,
it'll be okay. I think that if you know that you can go to said area and that said area is just for consuming cannabis, yeah. Great.
I mean, more than 51% of people in America say that the cannabis smell could be a problem. Could be a problem.
Then don't smoke cannabis and don't go to the areas where people are smoking cannabis. How about that?
Right.
Or is the problem that they feel that cannabis is just going to be everywhere? You know what I mean? Because you know what? Newsflash, everybody in the U.S. is pretty much already smoking cannabis as it is. Is there a problem with the smell? No. Was anybody talking about it before, all the legalization and people want to be able to consume publicly and no.
Right.
No, they weren't. You know what I mean? How many people at the local concert how many people complain about the smell of cannabis on 420 in the UVM campus? Go ahead, I'll put your hands up. I'll wait. No? Not one? No, okay. Well, I'm just saying that's a lot of people. We're talking about thousands, so
Right.
51% say it's a problem because it's only being brought to light now.
Right. Now, now my question is, with cannabis smoke, right? Like, obviously, we're moving into a different kind of area here in America, right? Right now, we're seeing a lot of edibles. I mean, people are looking for that alternative to smoking. So, do you think scent's going to be an issue when everybody's using vape pens or carts or edibles?
I don't know, man. I know a lot of people. You know what the latest thing that I've seen is, and I think this is actually pretty ingenious. Okay. You know how people grind coffee beans, right? Mm-hmm. So out here, you'll have people who really like to use cannabis in their workout, okay? And they don't want to smoke it. So what they'll do is they'll buy an ounce of cannabis, really like high-test cannabis usually, and they'll grind it up and they put it in their smoothies, literally. Okay, so now you got your berry mixture, whatever, and your peaches and your pineapples and everything like that. Let's say you're having a fruit smoothie that morning, a little bit of water, you add your greens in there, your cannabis in there, and everything. You grind it all up, and boom, there you go. Look at how accurate we have with, micro 4 millis for like 50, 100 milligram THC pills, right? Mm-hmm. Where people can literally just take a pill now. There's 100 milligrams of THC, and that's, they're doing that for a specific regimen for whatever it is specifically. I mean, science is so advanced in cannabis that we can do that.
Right.
This is real medicine. Okay, This isn't like, oh, we just got a medical cannabis program and everybody's just going to start smoking cannabis because that's the only way they can take it. No.
Right.
No, not at all.
I mean, I have a post here from a listener, Nick, who can't call him right now, but his response was, all parents should consume cannabis. Life's full of environmental stress, and I know it allows Nick to be the best version of himself. His father's choice of the drug was and is alcohol, and he's never been an active person within his life. We all use. From coffee to cocaine, I choose to be educated, and I choose clean, green cannabis. We should adopt a Jamaican lifestyle, non-decarboxylated cannabis tea and fresh cannabis juice for adolescent use. Our bodies are severely deficient. Sorry, I can't talk today. But anyways, cannabis plugs into almost every one of our body's receptors. So we're talking about receptors, and they're finding new receptors every day. The Jamaican lifestyle is a great conversation right now for kids, right? We talk a lot about the health strategies, like you were just saying. People who are environmentalists, they like to go outside. They are workout people, you know what I mean? They tend to lead the healthy lifestyle. We're seeing a lot of people turn to cannabis use, right? A lot of these reports talk about how cannabis can actually open up your lungs and help you breathe and help get in more oxygen, which is, quite contrary to the perceptions, right? You'd think smoking would hurt your lungs in most cases, where we're finding these studies are coming back that it's helping breathing, right? Also in obesity, here's another weird stigma, right? Like everybody who smokes cannabis is going to go eat a bag of chips and get fat, right? That's not necessarily the case in most cases. Like, I'm not going to say that people who smoke cannabis don't get the munchies, right? But typically, these guys, they're losing weight. I will say from my own experiences that, that's one of the things I kind of medically use cannabis for is my stomach, okay? So I had bad head injury years ago, just to give you a quick background of it. I was on 9 different meds, basically 8 for the side effects of the one that I needed, and I couldn't stand up for almost 2 months. And then even back about 20 years ago in Massachusetts, a doctor had recommended that I go see a neurosurgeon and get a medical cannabis card, smoke cannabis. Now, this is coming from the doctor who prescribed me the same, 8 or 9 medications prior to this, to then tell me that this could help me. So in the years that followed, I've been using it ever since. Now, for me personally, and I know a lot of other smokers out there, and like I said, please chime in if you're out there, guys, 802-454-7762. It curbs my appetite, right? If I start to get, my stomach feels a little pain, I'm a little hungry, whether it's a pain from something else or food, I can consume my cannabis and it relaxes my stomach right out to the point where I'm not hungry right now. You know what I mean? I can go further. So, and
that comes down to specific strain. There are strains out there that are sativas that will give you the munchies, and there's strain out there that are sativas that act as a very, very hard appetite suppressant.
Yep.
I mean, and if you know how to use this medicine properly, then you're going to get those type of results. And that's why we do the strain of the week every week. It's because I want people to actually know what it is that they're doing, or what they're getting into. I mean, it's very simple. Just educate yourself a little bit, and you'll be able to use it the way it needs to be used. I'm having trouble sleep. Okay, well, here, pack this indica, this Louis, if you will, into this pipe and take 2 hits of that and go back to bed, and you'll sleep wonderfully.
Yeah, you'll sleep great. But then again, if you take an extreme sativa, we'll say green crack or something, that's going to get you, up and going, you're not going to sleep. So then you're going to see people with issues. So that's why strain knowledge is very important, which is something that we discuss a lot on this show. Obviously, Brendan, you give us the strain of the week every week, right?
Yep. I mean, and that's really the purpose of it. Like this week we did the Louis. The King Louis is a phenotype of the OG Kush, and it's a great strain. I actually personally have some right now, and it's amazing. I love it. Mm-hmm. It does exactly what it's supposed to do. The heavy indica, it's really, more for nighttime, or if you're really just trying to relax in a creative type setting as well, If I wanted that daytime, immediate gas pedal type rush, a good go-to is mimosa, jet fuel, those really high sativas. Now, one is a very big appetite suppressant, and then the other one will give you the munchies. So, once again, it's all about what you're looking for, And if you have that athlete that likes to use like a jet fuel in his smoothie in the morning, some people use that as a pre-workout instead of a pre-workout in their smoothie. I mean, that's where we're at, I'm telling you, I see it. I really do see it in the future where the Olympic Trilateral Commission is going to pretty much declare cannabis as a performance-enhancing drug, and I'm going to laugh. I think that's awesome. It will happen.
Well, that topic has come up before about how they're going to, how like the NFL, the NBA, the baseball association is going to take in stride with this, because we've had a famous athlete in the last week say he's not going to play anymore because he's been indefinitely suspended because of his medically acceptable cannabis use within the state, which is completely legal with a medical card. And now the NFL is saying he can't play. Now, does that make it become, does this become a performance-enhancing drug in aspects when you look at it in that opinion, in that way, right? What happens when we look at this, in skating and all the other sports as well? The Olympics, like, how's that going to work if people are using CBD to heal themselves, right? It's not like, it's not much different than any of these other things that are outlawed because of, the regenerative properties of it, or the healthcare properties of it. Anyways, guys, we're going to come right back to the subject. Brendan, keep that in the back of your head. We're going to go to a quick break, and we'll be right back, guys. Don't go anywhere. This is WGDR Plainfield, WGDH Hardwick, Guard College Community Radio, 91.1 FM and 91.7. Give us a call today, 802-454-7762. We want your opinions. We are talking about parents and pot. We're talking about adolescent teen usages, and when do you teach your kids, and should you? Should we hide anything from these kids nowadays in the current status of where we are nationally? Guys, don't go anywhere. Again, this is Joseph Smith and Brendan Barberio with In the Weeds.
You're listening to In the Weeds Prohibition Talk Radio on WGDR 91.1 and WGDH 91.7.
Sometimes you catch that funky breeze. You're in the weeds. You're in the weeds.
People who use drugs are not only affecting themselves and their health, but also their loved ones. Did you know most people use drugs for the first time when they are teenagers? More than half of new illicit drug users in the Fox Valley begin with marijuana. If you or a loved one are struggling with drug abuse, call the Drug Rehab Helpline at 1-888-509-0168. That's 1-888-509-0168. Call today.
All right, and we are back again, guys. You're tuned into In the Weeds Prohibition Talk Radio with Joseph Smith, Brandon Barberio. Our topic of the day today is parents and pot. I just want to give a quick shout out to some upcoming shows that we have booked. Guys, we've been really working hard on booking out some upcoming shows, so you can go to our website, our social media pages, and figure out who we have coming. We have Eli Harrington with his new project of Hetty, Vermont, that everybody knows so well in New England. He's got a great new project coming up with some interesting people that you guys are going to want to hear about. We have a huge event coming to Burlington, Vermont in a couple of weeks, and I want to put a big plug in right now. I'm really excited to announce this. We're going to be working with the Byrne Gallery, Tito Byrne up there in Burlington, Vermont, who hosts Pipe Classic. So, guys, Pipe Classic 14 is coming to Burlington, Vermont. You'll find myself there all week long. I think we're going to be camping out with the Pipe Glass guys. These guys are world-renowned. This is one of the biggest and best glass blown competitions in the country.
When is this?
This
specifically?
year, it's coming. Hold on, Brandon, one moment. This year, it's coming. It's a week-long event. Guys, I can't even explain this to you. Literally the best pipe glass blowers in the country.
Oh, no. I mean, it's absolutely amazing. They're the original, right? I mean, I remember, obviously, from the show that we did with them last year, they were the original pipe contest and the whole 9 yards. So, like, this is a big deal for anybody, even around the world, you know what I mean, to be included in the Pipe Classic, because this is the best of the best of the best. I mean, and these guys, they're hardcore. Well, you better be ready to hang. You better be ready to throw down.
It's 13 hours, guys. 13 hours of, basically, it's kind of like a cooking show. The Burn Gallery gives you guys a bunch of glass. You guys go in, and you have to make a workable piece. So no matter what you design, I mean, last year we saw grow lights.
Yeah.
Hubbard made a grow light. We saw geckos. Crazy. We saw the disappearing pipe within a glass bowl. We saw so many cool things, you know what I mean? And a lot of these guys are coming back. So Captain Crunk, Chaka, Kurtz, Matt's coming, Dosh World, Hickory, Kaj Beck, who was here last year, Chris Hubbard, who was here last year and killed it, Serto, Sam Lyons, who was also again here last year, Lay's Face, and Joe P, and more guys. So the big cool thing is we're trying to get everybody on the show, whether it's going to be in studio or via video chat. So last year we had four of the competitors in studio, and it was a blast. These guys are crazy, and they love cannabis. So what's going to be fun about this year is we're going to be up there from the 23rd to the 28th of September now, guys, 23rd to 28th. And we're going to be right in their pockets. We're going to be taking video. We're going to be doing interviews. We're going to be doing all sorts of stuff through In the Weeds and the Burn Gallery. So I'm really excited by that. The Pipe Classic is brought to you by Glass Torch Technologies, and the best part about this whole event, you can walk right in and be a part of it for nothing. All you got to do is go to the Burn Gallery, right up there we're just kind of slightly off Church Street in Burlington, Vermont, and you can walk in and watch these guys compete. And it's an amazing thing that they do. And by the end of the week, it is one of the most exhausting. It's kind of like drill camp. But we're going to get these guys on next month. We have Dr. Uma coming back in October. A lot of announcements to make there. We have a lot. We have Urban Acres coming in from Mass, who just did a hemp growing field, and these guys are blowing up. Adam's been a panelist on a lot of these panels all over the country right now. So we have a lot of great things coming, guys, and more. The more I can't even think about, because I'm pretty excited about the Pipe Classic coming. So if you guys want to check that out, there's more information online. Go find us online, Facebook, In the Weeds. You can find us on Twitter, Weed Talk Radio. You can find us on Instagram at In the Weeds VT. We're also on YouTube, and you can catch all of our archives there. But now we're going to get back to it right now, where we're talking about kids. If you guys are tuned in right now, give us a call with any of your cannabis questions or concerns, 802-454-7762. We do have a bunch coming in on social media, which is great. Thank you guys for tuning in to us today. Another concern that popped up on social media, it was the parental stigma versus parents. It's not just, the kids, but parents. Now, I personally haven't really seen much of it, you know what I mean? I think I've seen more curiosity than people just blatantly against me being a cannabis professional in the industry kind of a deal, you know what I mean? And the curiosity that I see from the stigmas that are attached to us is, just, again, uneducated people that are going, hey, my whole life this was told to me that it's a bad thing, right? When actually I don't think it is, you know what I mean?
I had a really open relationship with my mom, and I told my mom everything. Like when I was in high school, if I was going to a party or, even to go drinking or whatnot, I knew I was going to be consuming alcohol. I always told her. I was like, yo, going to a party in the woods. We'll be back around like 12 but it was having that relationship then, at least if something had happened, someone would have came looking for me. You know what I mean? Or, I remember when I was young and I was consuming cannabis, I remember when my mom caught me the first time, and I was 16.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was like 16, and I was like, and she's like, and she was really mad, and I told her straight out, I was like, look, I'm going to keep doing this. I was like, because I'm not drinking liquor at all or anything else, and I don't like any of that, and this and that, and whatever. And she didn't approve of it at all. I mean, she fought me the whole way, but I told her straight out from the get-go, like, I didn't want to have that relationship where I was hiding, One day, I will never forget this. One day, I went out and I had a paper route. That's how I used to make my money when I was young. Obviously, I was a teenager. And I had a pretty big route. And I remember I saved up enough money. I wanted to buy myself an eighth. I remember my buddy came and brought it to me and everything like that. And then my mom found out about it, and she was so mad at me that she took it and gave it to my uncle. Because my uncle smoked cannabis. And I was, so mad because I had worked so hard. And it's just so funny because, thinking back of that, I was a 17-year-old kid,
Mm-hmm. Right.
But, it was different.
Well, I mean, but it's so funny when we talk to people because, we think about the last 3 or 4 years, how much the industry has flipped over in certain aspects and it's kind of reverted in other aspects, right? There's always been stigmas, obviously, the stoners or this or that, the parents or this or that, but, we're realizing nowadays that a lot of very successful people that lead very great lives are cannabis users, right? A lot of people in our arts and entertainment industries are, cannabis users, right? Lots of guys are in support of. I mean, now we're looking at athletes like Mike Tyson's and stuff like that who are cannabis users, right? How does this make people feel when they see, how does this take the stigma of the lazy couch stoners, you know what I mean? And then being able to be a parent. That's the biggest thing. It's kind of funny when we talk about parents and kids because, what's our typical, when you think about, I guess, what's the word I want to say? I mean,
I'm going to say right off the bat, hang on. When it comes to athletes and cannabis, right? The first thing that pops into my head, the first two things that pop into my head are Michael Phelps and Usain Bolt.
Right.
Both of those guys use cannabis, and I don't need to tell you how many gold medals they've won. So that pretty much seals the deal for me on that subject.
Right. Right. And there's reports coming that Lance Armstrong used it along with other substances. And I mean, there's a lot of people in the industry that use, in the athletic industry, that use cannabis or CBD or some sort of equivalent to. I mean, and the sad part is, as we look back over the last few years, we've seen a lot of people get arrested, a lot of people who've lost their job within sports industry because of a use of cannabis, whether you're a trainer or an athlete, So I guess where I was going with my previous comment was, the American dream, right? It seems like everything in the American dream has a cigarette and a beer in it, right? Every time you look in the back in the 50s and the 60s, there's a cigarette and a beer in it, right? And we're worried about cannabis, you know what I mean? So what is the American dream right now? How do we go about educating our kids? That's the question of the day. How do you and when do you educate your kids? It's a new world out there, but as the stigmas, as legality increases, it seems like the stigmas are still there. I mean, the reports are coming in, and we're still kind of, avoiding these reports. Parents are still going to make their own decisions, especially when it comes to kids. We're always really protective. But then I always ask the question, if you're, and I hate to say this because I don't want to put a parent in this feeling, but if your child was going to be getting a life-threatening illness, cancer, for instance, in their stage 4, is this something that you would not be willing to try? I mean,
and I'm sure that there are people out there. I know for a fact there are people out there that know that these things exist and know they're just in some way, shape, or form in a certain type of denial, if you will, and will not use said products for whatever reason. and there could be tons of them, from personal to religious to however it goes, you know.
Yep.
And now on the flip side of that, there could be people that are complete naturalists. As a matter of fact, growing up, I went to school with somebody from Canada whose parents were naturalists, and they did not use any type of pharmaceuticals at all. My roommate was banned from any type of pharmaceutical use at all, any type of treatment, anything like that. Very strict rules, very strict guidelines, and he was one of the healthiest kids, you know, in school. So what does that tell you?
Right.
You know, like, obviously they had some grasp on what they were doing. Now, they didn't take it to an extreme where, you know, obviously if something happened maybe where they, like, broke a leg or something to that degree, obviously you would go to the hospital and they would, you know, do what they would need to do in order to repair his leg, and that's an extreme set of circumstances, you know, but I'm sure that there's people out there that even under those type of conditions still deny care. I mean, you know, like.
And let's not talk about the United States. Let's talk a little bit globally. I mean, there's places like, you know, let's talk about Thailand and Bangkok that are now one of the forefronts on cannabis and research and development. And
Israel.
Just a few years ago, you could get killed for cannabis, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and now everybody wants the miracle cure. It's the fountain of youth. It's the cancer killer. It's the you know, the end all be all to all. But, you know, I mean,
right. I mean, when we talk about cannabis, you know, we talk about THC, we talk about CBD, and we also talk about hemp and what hemp can do for us in our future. I mean, and literally anything made from plastic can be made from hemp. Hemp requires about half the water that cotton needs to grow, right? 1 acre of hemp produces the same amount of paper as 4.1 acres of trees, right? So, you know, here we are talking about, you know, rainforest fires that no one's really talking about that could be devastating to our world here. And we are still arguing over hemp. I mean, 1 acre of hemp produces more oxygen than 25 acres of forest. So not only, I mean, where do we end these stigmas? Where do we finally go, okay, this is what we need to do? Where do we finally start grasping the realities of what our future can hold and start investing into these situations where it's either hemp, cannabis, CBD? You know, we laugh all the time about how the government will not take it off a Schedule 1 substance list, but, you know, they've also passed a few other people to make profits off of it. So, it's crazy going on around here, right? So,
of course it is.
So, but
it's always crazy.
One thing I did want to bring up, and when we talk about childhood education right now, one of the biggest issues we see within the cannabis industry that's, you know, a healthcare concern, and I don't care who you are, but this should be a concern for everybody, is vaping, right?
Yep.
There's over. They just released an article basically stating that there's 149 illnesses in the United States alone linked to vaping. All right, now that's let me make this clear. This is for CBD, THC, and e-cigarette vaping, right? Now, we talk about popcorn lung, we talk about glycols, we talk about VCs, we talk about all these things that we find within these products. And then even when these products don't have any of these additives and they're really a fresh, clean product, they put them into a cheap Chinese-made vape pen cartridge, and then, you know, the heating of that fluid is also giving off chemicals that can be painful to people. Now, again, as a parent, and I want to ask every parent tuning in right now, because this is what our show's based about. You know, I've had a couple of weeks here where it's just been a lot of, you know, stigmas and issues and parental things. As my kid turned 7 today, this is the important thing for me, because I want my kid to be educated on what he can and cannot be doing. I want to understand what this plant can do for people or not. I want to be able to have a smart enough knowledge on this to know when he talks to somebody, he can have an intelligent conversation and be open for opinions. That's one thing we are here. We're open for your opinion. If you want to give us your opinion, 802-454-7762. We'll get you right into the studio with me today. But, you know, we have over 150 people in 15 states right now who's has develop severe, now these are severe lung illnesses associated with, e-cigarette and cannabis product use, okay, vape products. So what do we do? I mean, unfortunately, because of the stigma surrounding cannabis against cannabis, I think that not a lot of people are being open-minded to this issue because, I see on social media a lot of people fight back, especially the cannabis advocates saying, this is fake news, this isn't true, when it really is, you know what I mean? There's a lot of things like anything that can go wrong in a process, right? Like, Kellogg's cereal has arsenic in it, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
These things happen in way more than we want to know. The cannabis business and the industry is more regulated than any other industry right now. Your meat industry would be shocking to you if you really knew what was going on. The fish industry would be shocking to you if you really knew what they're drugging out of the ocean and feeding you. Yep. The box might not always be accurate to what's within that box, right? So anywhere you go, I mean, you can go buy a granola bar that could be more harmful for you than good. You know what I mean? And you're trying to be healthy, right? We see this everywhere. Our listener that brought up the point earlier about non-decarboxylated cannabis, right? Now, here's something that we don't talk about enough on the show, and this is an educational aspect as well, right? Decarboxylation. What is decarboxylation? How does it work? And then what products do you have that are either decarboxylated or not, and how it may affect you differently, right? So as we know, Brandon, give us a quick example of what decarboxylation is and does.
Decarboxylation. So, wait, you're talking about from the aspect specifically of just cannabis, right?
Yes, correct.
Like, now, in which way? Because I'm thinking of this in two different ways. You're talking from the actual, just the plant and curing the plant, right? So after you've grown it, you've cured it, and now you want to decarboxylate it. If I'm thinking of this in the right terminology, or because I'm about to even check myself.
Well, I think
you kind of have.
Well, with decarboxylation, I mean, all right. So if you have a cannabis plant, a lot of people are talking about raw cannabis, eating raw cannabis, how good it is for you because of the cannabinoids, right? We're not taking any cannabinoids away from the plant. When you start doing processes like you would for a vape cart or any sort of other product from cannabis that's non-flower, you're going to do something to it, right? A lot of people do BHO, there's CO2, there's water, there's ethanol, and the list goes on, right? So there's plenty of ways you can extract your THC. Now, what a lot of people don't realize is when that plant is in the ground, there really is no THC in it, right? It's THCA, right? So we have to convert it. And the process of converting THCA to THC is decarboxylation. Now, that can happen in one of many different ways, whether you do it on the stovetop, whether you seep it in oil, or whether you bake it in an oven. But anyways, cannabis has to get to a certain temperature before it turns to THC. The reason why raw flower works is because we heat it, right? So technically when it goes in your bowl, it's THCA, but when it comes out of the other end of the bowl, it's THC, right? So when we're talking about health products and things like this, where we're talking about eating raw cannabis, and where, the previous listener was talking about it within, using it for their children, and children usage, there's no THC in there, right? There's no psychotropic drug compound in that thing, right? So is that something we can feed our kids?
Okay. So as it comes specifically to cannabis, no, you are extremely right. This is the process involved to apply low heat for extended periods of time to convert cannabis to non-toxifying THCA.
Right.
So that's the initial source, and you want to turn it into THC.
Mm-hmm.
So by decarboxylating the cannabis, it's an easy way that you can basically, there's so many ways. You could do it pretty much in an oven if you wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
You're just going to set it to a low setting, and you're literally going to pull it down, and then you're basically pulling the psychotropic effect out of that form. That way you could take it now. That's what I mean. So now once you have it in that form, Now, what are you doing? Are we just grinding it up? Are you cooking with it? Are you extracting it? Because there's so many, what if we wanted to make like a really high test oil out of it at that point?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess it really depends. Like you said, what are you making out of it? I think it can be made into anything. The decarboxylation process is trying to get you your THC. So, like, typically what people will do is in raw products, they will put a decarboxylated product within it. Now, the question is, do I need to decarboxylate before I process? Not necessarily. No, it depends on your processing. Which avenue you're processing it with. Will it heat it? So the decarboxylation, you have to get up to around 220 degrees Fahrenheit, right? So whether you can get to that within a press, now we talk about rosin versus fresh press stuff. A lot of fresh press stuff, people are pressing at a way lower temperature than 220 because they're trying to keep all the cannabinoids. Cannabinoids start dying off about 180, 185 degrees is when you start losing your cannabinoids. Now, when you're medicating, this is the big thing for us in our education and our spiel here is when you're medicating, that's what you want. You want all your endocannabinoids. You want all your cannabinoids. You want everything to go into because you get what they call the entourage effect, right? So very few
Remember when where was it? We were having a meeting. It was me and you. It was a video chat meeting with all of our, all the different people, right, growers and everything. And we were talking about pressing. Remember, everybody was laughing at me, and they were like, well, what do you press your cannabis at, Brandon? And I was like, 85. And they're like, degrees? And I'm like, yeah, 85. Yeah. And everyone's like, well, why? And I was like, because if you do it very slow and extremely low, it takes a little bit longer. Yep. But the potency will be absolutely ridiculous.
Right, and then also your terpenes won't cooked off.
The profile will be absolutely insane.
So the biggest problem I find, and this is, again, an educational thing, is that, how many patients do we know right now that are using vape carts for
a lot
for medical usages? I mean, Champlain Valley Dispensary here in Vermont sells vape carts proudly that uses PG. So you're like, huh? You know what I mean? And glycols in their carts, and they're serving them to the public. So how is that acceptable form of medication, right? Do they sell fresh press? I don't think so. But do they have carts? Sure, no. Right? So there's that medication right now. This is where the education needs to come into effect, everybody, because and everybody goes, we've all been there where we had an edible that either kicked us in the ass or we didn't feel it at all. We're going, what the heck's going on with this? You know what I mean? And then again, we talk about, was it a distillate? Was it an extracted process? Was it oil that was made and steeped properly? Was it a pressed product? And then, and
a lot of people don't know how to answer those questions too. You know what I mean?
Right.
They have no idea because they're just going by what someone told them, if you will.
Yep.
And hopefully that advice was extremely knowledgeable,
right.
Because if not, then...
I mean, if you're looking to cook anything, make an oil, typically we want to say decarboxylate. You can go online, Google decarboxylation and processes, and it will talk to you about how it can walk you through. Now, decarboxylation can, again, come through with oils and lecithins and heat. People can do it on a stove. You can do it in the oven. Basically, the general idea is to get to a certain temperature so the THC converts over to the THC converts to THC.
Right.
Then you could literally eat it right off the pan, out of the oven, and you would get that high sensation, right? Otherwise, you're just going to begin the entourage effect, in essence.
Right. I mean, well, wait, that it worked both ways. I mean, if you were using it, maybe you wanted to overcook it so that you kill the essence of the THC to lessen, like I said, the psychotropic effect so that you could rip it down for medicine for a kid. You know what I mean? Yep. So it's not so powerful. I think that's what everybody's really looking into it for, obviously, is to lessen the effects for,
Right. I mean, there's a great article. I'm going to copy and paste it right now to our Facebook page. It's basically Dr. Ethan Russo. I was fortunate enough to be able to sit down and have a couple conversations with Dr. Ethan Russo while he was here at the medical conference last summer that we went to in Montpelier that Gladstar put on for everybody, which was an amazing event.
Oh, Gladstar, yeah.
Yeah, so when Rosemary put this event on, she brought the best people in the country out to Vermont for this event, which was insanely awesome. Now, Ethan Russo was out here, and he was one of the first people I heard talk about the entourage effect, right? How it makes perfect common sense.
Yep, it sure does.
It's like saying that 18 things is not better than one thing. You know what I mean? And when we talk about the CBD boom in America right now, where everybody's CBD based, it's CBD. How many other cannabinoids have we found to be better at certain things than CBD?
Right. I mean, okay, so let's go back to carbon with the cannabis again. We're finding that you can take THC now, and at a certain level of heat, when if you're smoking your cannabis, is now actively turning it into CBN. And CBN is very important for people that are using cannabis that have insomnia and they want to sleep. So you're making that effect even stronger with your indica by turning the THC to CBN and literally, creating that. So there you go. Once again, that's another form of it because it's just a process of heat.
No,
but we didn't know that until just recently. You know what I'm saying? Like, this information, actually, I just found out about it, I think, 3 months ago. I saw someone post an article about CBN and how useful it was. But this is just because people are starting to get these results from the places where everybody's doing the testing.
I mean, we're seeing a lot of
these.
Yeah, well, we're seeing a lot of these CBD products that aren't even really CBD again, but that's another conversation.
You can go to any local gas station. I see signs everywhere where it says CBD sold here, third-party tested. Yeah,
right.
Sure it is.
Is it really now?
You really want to buy your CBD from a gas station?
Right. Weed Maps even this week is coming out with a lot of crazy things, but now they put their foot down. I don't know if anybody saw that article. But,
I sure did.
Weed Maps is basically going to kick you off of their site if you're non-conformed legally within the cannabis industry, which what I mean is you have to be a licensed business to be able to use Weed Maps at this point. Obviously, Weed Maps is based out of California. They start in California, and that's where their biggest impact probably really is truly felt. But we all kind of know the idea behind Weed Maps, right? So it's a place where you can go and find and sell and distribute and buy in bulk and quantity and little stuff, whatever you really want in the cannabis industry. It's there, right? Now, is it perfectly legal and conformant to all laws? We don't know that. Apparently not, though, because here they are now talking about how they're going to start advertising on licensed cannabis retailers later this year. So they're going.
That's what the owner says, but you read the article just like I did, and basically the owner in code was pretty much like, yeah, we're not doing this. So,
obviously they have a business that wants to go into certain places in the future, obviously, right? They have plans. They have plans for expansion. Obviously, the legal cannabis market has a lot to do with it, and especially in this day and age where we don't know where the federal government stands on anything right now. We got all these raids going on in legal states. We've got people shutting down unlicensed companies and corporations and growers and producers and sellers literally all across the United States right now, and they're doing it in a hush fashion, guys. Just the other day, right, and here in Vermont, we had our local skate shop in Burlington get busted, right? So these guys got busted, again, selling cannabis right out the front door, which is crazy to think because, within this article, right, they're literally within a throw and rock distance of the Burlington Police Department, right?
Yep.
A lot of people, when we know a lot of you are not from Vermont, but we just had another business in Vermont that got busted doing the same thing, literally right across the street from the
town hall.
The town hall, basically in Burlington, right? So, and openly doing it. And this again is another skate shop that's openly selling cannabis.
I got to just say here for a second, in a certain way, it's kind of an ingenious thing if you think about it. Like, who's really looking for the guy selling cannabis right next to the police station?
Right.
Like, I mean, I'm just saying, you know, not that he should be doing it, but, you know, it's like, hey,
well,
how does that work if you're a consumer too? Well, what? You're the skate shop next to the where? Oh, come on, man. Really? Like, I got to come right next to the police station?
Well, I mean, a lot of these situations, you know, there are numerous reports. I mean, the last one in Burlington, there was lots of reports on what the business was doing. The police knew about it. And this is where it really puts law enforcement at a weird crossroad, right? Because here we are in Vermont. We'll take Vermont as an example because it's a Vermont issue. We have a slight sense of legality, right? We have a medical field. We don't have a tax and reg system in Vermont yet. So, you know, we do have plant counts, and we've seen people that, you know, were going to court over one plant over the count. I just got an email this morning that case has been thrown out. Congratulations to Tim Fair, who can't be with us today because he's dealing with so many court cases right now. Huge shout out to those guys and to the state for throwing this out, because this really is a ridiculous charge when you look at it. But then again, we have, you know, businesses in Vermont that are growing illegal grows of up over 200-300 plants, and nothing happens to them. You know what I mean? So this is where, you know, depending on the county where you're at and where you're from and all these strange stipulations, right? But that being said, it doesn't let anybody off the hook. You know what I mean? And these guys getting busted in these states, guys, you know, you're advertising, you're promoting, you're still, you know, in social media light selling these products that we know are still illegal. We got to be better than that, right? You know, this case, you know, there's 50 plants involved. There's over $67,000, and they're facing up to 20 years in prison. So the laws are still there, guys. As much as we talk about this plant being legalized and legal in certain instances, they are still busted and kicking in your door, right? The government's talking about laying off and not proceeding with convictions and bust, but then again, they're still doing it. I mean, California's a great example. Go Google any sort of unlicensed cannabis bust, and you're going to see thousands and thousands and thousands.
I do want to step back, though, for a second to what Tim said. I think it was last week ago, which was even though we are seeing this on the upfront, okay, you never hear about the back end. You might hear that there was this huge bust and these cops went in and they got all this and they raided it and everything. But what you don't hear is those people never, you know, the case got thrown out because the judge had to throw it out on terms of this, and they couldn't prosecute it because of certain laws and regulations that were put in place. And it does go the other way too, you know, where we see it actually, you know, does work in the state's favor, and boom, that does happen, and then it does go forward. But, I mean, a lot of them are not going forward. A lot of people are getting off when it comes to cannabis in courts because, I mean, it's kind of a joke if you really think about it, you know?
It really is. I mean, we still have issues of, you know, people, you know, one area of news last week, 4 tons of weed discovered inside of a shipment of jalapenos. You know what I mean? So we still have those smuggling issues going on that these guys are trying to cut down on, right? There was a truck driver last week going through, again, we've had a couple truck driver instances already where these truck drivers are going through certain states. This one was an allowable state. I want to say it was Ohio, if I remember right. It was almost just like the one we heard before. But, you know, the guy got caught, got charged, and got released in a legal state. You know what I mean? So how does that happen? You know what I mean? Again, it's education, and this is where I think a little bit more of government oversight needs to be had when it comes to policing and healthcare systems, right? Because, again, we're talking about kids and health this show, right? one big thing we're missing is when do we educate our kids? And this is the question of the day. When do you educate your kids so they know about the plant, they know about its benefits, they're educated against things like vape carts and other things that can hurt them? Because, again, just like your kid trying cannabis 10 years ago for the first time, now that we're even legal, we still have issues with this. So it's not, it's... the vape carts are something you want to educate your kid on. It's just like any other drug out there. Heroin, are you going to ignore with your kid at this day and age, or are you going to try your best to educate your children on heroin? I mean, this is another hot-button subject of, no one's ever died from cannabis, and this is what we're worried about, right? But how many deaths from heroin do we have yesterday? Just yesterday alone in this country. I bet you the numbers are staggering. And when are we going to take aim to educate our kids on heroin use or hard opioid addictions? And again, now I'll raise another great question. We just saw mushrooms get legalized in Colorado, and a couple other states are coming right behind them, right? Are you going? Is that something you're going to have a conversation with your kid about? Is mushrooms? Imagine if your kid gets a hold of a bag of mushrooms. At least with cannabis, right? Now, if just for you guys to know out there, if you were to have a child or yourself personally that eats too much edibles or gets involved with a high that they think is too intense, too much, right? You're starting to freak out. It's too much, right? The biggest things to remember is, obviously, don't panic. First of all, you need to know your limits and whatever you're ingesting, how it works within you. So, again, if you're going to take a 200 milligram cookie and eat the whole thing, it's going to probably be pretty intense. If you're going to get a bag of gummies and eat one and wait 30 minutes and go, hey, I don't feel it, and eat 3 more, then wait 20 minutes and eat 3 more, you're going to get rocked, right? This is where a lot of the issues that we see come in when people talk about, hey, this was too intense, I didn't like it, right? The third thing is remember to stay hydrated. Whether you're smoking, consuming, anything like that, make sure you stay hydrated. Just like any other caffeine or anything else, cannabis can dehydrate you, believe it or not. One and two of the best ways to bring down your high when you feel that way. One is CBD oil, which is interesting enough. You can use CBD. Another kitchen method would be chewing black peppercorns. It will relieve anxiety. It'll bring you back to a calm that you can handle yourself, and that's available in everybody's kitchen. You might not have a bottle of CBD with you everywhere, but I'm sure you can find pepper, right? Keep calm, rest, go for a walk, take a shower or bath, or more importantly, just distract yourself, because it's just, it's going to pass. That's the one thing that you have to remember is eventually it will pass. Second of all, no one's ever died from cannabis overdoses. So, don't freak out. You're going to be fine. And you can contact a medical professional and talk to them. But, we're seeing a lot of an uptick in hospital visits due to people with anxiety and not being able to handle, I don't want to say handle cannabis, but have put themselves in a position where they feel this anxiousness or try a product that they weren't educated on, or, here, smoke this, and the next thing you know, it's a super sativa and they're bouncing, right?
I think that this is kind of funny because I think it's a reverse nostalgia. Let me see what you think about this. What does everybody see when we think of commercial cannabis, okay? Someone that's a famous rapper like Snoop Dogg, okay, or whatever. We see these guys like Wiz Khalifa, and they're smoking blunt after blunt after blunt after blunt after blunt. I mean, literally, in 1 half-hour show, you're watching these guys smoke 3 to 4 blunts in a rotation every 10 minutes. So people look at this and they go, well, these guys are consuming a ton of cannabis and nothing's really happening to them, they're just getting a little bit fuzzy. And then what happens is, once again, it's a reverse effect. So now, let's say you and your buddies, mid-20s, they're like, yeah, man, we're going to go hang out, have this party. We're going to go out to Oregon for the weekend. We're going to pick up this ounce of some really crazy dro. And then they go and they sit down and they each take one hit, and about 45 minutes later, somebody wakes somebody else up off of the couch and they're like, yo, man, we're going to go get a pizza. And it's totally not what they thought it was because I think that's also part of it too as well. You know what I mean? Like, now, is that, how do you explain that? Is that just our lifestyle? Mm-hmm. Is that just what they do? Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. No.
And now, is that a complete falsity where these people who maybe are idolizing these type of celebrities are thinking that they can do the same thing that they're doing?
Well, I mean, that's kind of like the idea of using celebrity, what you could say, endorsements in certain products, which is kind of the same thing, isn't it? You know what I mean? A lot of these celebrities and these professionals in the industry right now are coming out and claiming, open cannabis use because they are part of this company. Oh, they started this business. You know what I mean? We're seeing, we even see in government levels. We're seeing ex-senators and people that were on a government level jobs that were against cannabis to head cannabis companies now, right? Because it's where the money's at, right? And because of, I woke up one day and realized that this plant can heal people. So, reading some of the responses on social media, a lot of parents are chiming in right now about, what they do. Some parents, they talk about how they smoke a couple blunts every day, bedtime, dealing with their kids. We have parents that are talking about, other parents, like, so the cannabis community brings up the issue of the wine community, basically, right? Like, are you a wine drinking Xanax popping mom? Is that better or different than a cannabis smoking mom? Why is there the stigma for the cannabis smoking mom worse than the wine drinking Xanax popping mom?
It shouldn't be. It should be the opposite. The cannabis smoking mom should be the hero. You know what I mean? Like, can we do that? Can we make the cannabis mom like the old, what was her name? The old, they used to have the posters in the wartime, right? And she was all done up. I can't remember her name off the top of my head, but can't we do that? Like,
they're always smoking a cigarette. They're on the side of a plane. They're all dressed up. It's all military. I mean,
no, it'll just be like the mom with the joint in her hand. You know what I mean? Fighting for the
you can do it
instead of the Xanax and alcohol.
Right, you can do it, mom. Right, and not to take away. I enjoy wine. I enjoy drinking some alcohol in moderation, but I also know that when I drink too much, the outcomes that can happen and the issues that I could face with that. I tend to smoke cannabis more because I don't have to worry about that. I don't have to worry about overdosing or drinking to a point while I'm hanging out with my friends I'm going to have to get a cab call from him to find a place to stay, or I can't walk out of a building on my own power,
Right.
And then now that's going to bring a whole different level of like community, I guess you could say, around this. Look at the bar industry in this country. And where that came from. I mean, there is a bar in some places in every corner, right? In feeding this industry. We talk about, the social consumption laws in most of these states. Like we said, Ontario, you can smoke right now a blunt anywhere a cigarette smoker can smoke. Should that be how it is? Should it be any different?
Yeah.
Are we going to have these social cannabis clubs here shortly where, music and, you just go there kind of like the Summer Lounge in Worcester, Mass., which, we visit a lot and love those guys. Huge shout out to Kyle and what they're doing down there. But here's a place that you can go and consume your cannabis on your own time with other like-minded consumers. There's no alcohol.
Yeah.
There's no drugs. You need a bong. There's a bong there. And you guys can just sit there and hang out. I mean, one of the best things about cannabis is the social aspects of it, right? I mean, we said before, a lot of musicians, artists, people all over the world that say cannabis helps them be creative, right? Keeps their mind going. Artists, a lot, I mean, granted, they do a lot of other drugs as well, but cannabis seems to be one of those ones that everybody in the world kind of seems to fall back on and has a positive to it more so than any sort of negatives that are out there. Again, guys, we're talking about the cannabis and parents conversation. If you want to give us a call, 802-454-7762. The show's coming to an end here shortly, so if you want to get any opinions in, we're getting a bunch on social media that kind of fall in line with us. Like, your parents should be teaching your kids. You smoke, teach your kids.
I mean, I really kind of hope that the education with cannabis is really shifting and going in that direction. And I feel positive in saying that I really feel that it is. Mm-hmm. I really kind of think everybody is getting to a point where they're like, look, we have all this information that's coming out from different sources. This is what it's saying. It's really positive. Yes, there's going to be some bad information. There's going to be bad products. There's going to be people mimicking these products just like they do in every other industry. Pharmaceuticals aren't any different. You know what I mean? Mm. You can buy Zoloft or you can buy the knockoff of Zoloft, which is way cheaper. And you know what I mean? People are still buying it, like, and they know it's even worse, but they're still doing it. Like, there's no difference. So, you know, when you take all these variables and you put them aside, at the end of the day, you know, it all comes back to just make sure you know what it is that you have, what it is that you're consuming, really know your grower, and where all your products are really coming from. If you can single source your products and do it yourself, even better. That's awesome. Hopefully we get to a point where people don't even have to go to dispensaries anymore because they can just grow their own supply of 6 plants, and that's, you know what I mean, enough. Now, are there extreme occasions where maybe there's a patient that needs more than that because they're, you know, battling some major illness? Yeah. And those products should be accessible to those people. You know what I mean? And hopefully that is the way that it ends up. Hopefully it goes back to the way that it was before cannabis and hemp got outlawed in the United States, where we were flourishing as a country. I mean, that would be absolutely amazing. I don't understand why everybody's so scared of it. That's what I don't get. I don't understand why this is kind of like such a taboo subject in a sense. Like, this is exactly how it used to be. You know, and then all of a sudden all these things came along that literally made it the complete opposite in a sense. Just need to go back to that model. So much easier of a time.
All right, sorry about that, Brandon. We just had a call in. We have Max on the line who wants to talk about the parents and pot issue. Max, how you doing?
Not too bad. Yourself?
Good, man, good. And you called to give us your opinion on how do you feel about parents and pot in this day and age?
You know, I think it's something that absolutely should be taken care of at the same way we do it with alcohol and tobacco. And, you know, we let these kids know, hey, these are the effects. These are the warnings. And this is what it can do. And I feel the same way with pot. I think there's a lot of, I don't know, myth. I guess I'd say that, you know, people, you know, think, pot's way safer, or marijuana's way safer. And you know, regardless of whether it's safer or not, there's still, you know, some inherent risk.
Mm-hmm.
Use. You know, I understand there's a difference because of the, you know, the medical side of it. But as far as recreational use goes, I believe there's a gentleman earlier talking about guys like Wiz Khalifa who pretty much endorse it. You know, but nobody says the other side of it.
Right. Now, when we're talking about medical versus personal and you know, recreational, I guess you could say, where do you stand as a parent, being on the line of, should they, you know, if you have a child, are you going to let them smoke prior to 21? You know, should the medical system be able to be available for children as young as, you know, birth? How would you approach that in a parental aspect?
Yep. You know, it's pretty interesting that, you know, big pharmaceutical will shove all kinds of pills down kids' throats and will feed them all kinds of Adderall and all this stuff that, you know, basically been lobbied for. And a lot of people don't, you know, they don't think twice about it.
Right.
And when you talk about the use of marijuana treating a child, it becomes this kind of a sketchy topic. And I think really what it boils down to is the individual's choice. I'm a complete libertarian, and I think that that's a choice that each parent should be able to make for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Now,
definitely.
Now, do you think a state should interfere with a parent's choice of medicating their child, like we saw in like we're talking about today, in Oregon today, that we're talking about, where the state had made the choice to operate against parental choices?
It's kind of touchy, isn't it, when you talk about? I don't think the federal government has any business in intervening in anything like that of the sort. But when you break it down to a smaller form of government, it's hard to say. I think some people, have to be careful, and they have to be watched, because maybe they aren't making a safe choice for that child. But in the bottom line, that it's their choice. That's what I believe. When you're talking about the opioid crisis in America, and people that get addicted from let's say they broke an ankle or something, and they're not doing bikes for the next 20 years because they couldn't get off of it. I don't think most people are that same way with THC.
Right.
So from that perspective, I think it's much safer. There's still a risk with cannabis use, for sure. Like the toxicities that are similar to cigarettes. They're just lower. I know that it's a lower carcinogen level. PAHs or something like that. And
Yep.
But it's still have ammonia, hydrogen cyanide, and the nitrogen oxides. But
well, with that, a lot of that is how you grow it too, man. I mean, that's a discussion we got for another day. But unfortunately, guys, I have to step away from the mic. The show's coming to an end. We have Jessalyn Dolan with her health and wellness tip. But I love Max. I love that point, because it brings me to a point where I go, what are you putting in your cannabis? Now, if you have clean cannabis, just kind of like tobacco, if you have clean tobacco, a lot of these issues do not happen within the tobacco industry, right? It's what we're putting into it as producers and manufacturers of these products that we're putting on the shelves for our own people, right? Guys, I do have to say goodbye. Max, thank you. Brendan Barberio, thank you again for a great conversation today. This has been chewing at me for a couple of weeks about parents and pot. Like, how do we proceed with releasing those stigmas and allowing an everyday person to be able to smoke a joint on their porch while their kids inside watching TV, you know what I mean, without any sort of stigmas or, people complain and with the possibility of losing your child, which is, a bunch of articles we wrote about today. Guys, we're going to head out of here with Jessalyn Dolan. We have a couple great shows next week. Eli Harrington of Heady, Vermont, with his newest project. Guys, stay tuned for that. We have a whole list of next month already filled in. Go to our Facebook page, and you can find all of our events coming up here shortly. Thank you guys for tuning in. This is Jessalyn Dolan with our health and wellness tip. Thank you guys. We'll see you next week. Have a great week.
Yeah, you too, brother.
Hi, this is Jessie Lynn Dolan, cannabis nurse researcher, educator, and consultant, cannabis and hemp farmer. I founded the Vermont Cannabis Nurses Association and Nurse Grown Organics, and am bringing you a weekly dose of whole plant to whole person medicine and healing tips. As we start to look towards fall harvest and 10,000 acres of Vermont hemp now flowering, I wanted to educate listeners on the idea of bioremediation or phytoremediation when it comes to hemp farming and CBD products. The Ministry of Hemp's article entitled How Hemp Can Heal Our Soil and Why It Matters to Consumers simply defines bioremediation as using living things to heal the soil, allowing us to clean and reclaim polluted lands. While bacteria and other microorganisms can be used, phytoremediation relies on crops like hemp to do so. In Central Oregon Green Pages, Elaine Charkowski reiterates, saying hemp can also be used to clean up metals, pesticides, solvents, explosives, crude oil, polyaromatic hydrocarbons and toxins leaking from landfills. The National Hemp Association says hemp plants are exceptional against heavy metals in soils, as shown by a study conducted in China. 18 cultivars of hemp were tested for tolerance and accumulation of heavy metals and identified for its phytoremedial use. Results showed that 15 of the 18 cultivars were considered to be good biodegradable